Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode, where we hear from Carla Winsey, who together with her husband Al own and run Silchester Farm, an events and wedding venue based just outside Basingstoke. Carla and Al bought the farm in 2018 and spent a great deal of time, effort and love to transform it into a beautiful venue that reflects their values. The whole operation has also been built with a serious focus on sustainability. What's amazing is that both Carla and her husband come from a tech background, so the transition from that world into one of owning and running a farm and an events venue is clearly a big one, and I was interested to hear how they'd managed this process. I also wanted to know what it's like to base your home life and business life on the same piece of land. There are of course lots of other topics that Carla and I will discuss and do discuss during the course of the podcast, but overall this is a great story about going with your gut, taking the plunge and adapting as you grow towards success. Please enjoy the episode. Hi Carla, great to have you on the Evolve to Succeed podcast. Really interested to get to know a bit more about you and Silchester Farm during the course of this conversation. We did actually host one of our Evolve business festival events with Basingstoke and Dean local authority at the farm, didn't we, recently? So I've been there, I've seen it, and it's made me really intrigued, Carla, to find out a bit more. So I suppose I should start. You acquired the farm, as I understand it, in 2018. How and why did that come about?
It was, I guess, a little bit by chance that it came about, but my husband Al and I have the farm now, and before we had the farm, we both worked in IT, and we'd always kind of done a little bit of doing up of properties and making them what we wanted, and really we were on the lookout for somewhere with a bit more land, hopefully a farm. We were hoping to run it probably more as a farm when we were initially looking, and yeah, we basically stumbled across Silchester Farm, to be honest. And the moment we walked in, we absolutely fell in love with every part of it, and not only with the way it was then, but with the potential that we could see for the place as well. So, and its location, the village was beautiful and somewhere where we'd never come to before, even though we only lived 10 minutes down the road before we moved to Silchester Farm. So yeah, it was a real chance encounter, and one that we were delighted to have stumbled across, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it is a beautiful place. And I suppose the question there asks, is kind of what there must have been this kind of baptism of fire then, two individuals from the IT kind of background, a corporate kind of background, buying a farm. I assume partly as, your personal residence for you and your family, but also with some business opportunities. But can you remember that moment when you perhaps, acquired the farm, got the keys, and that was it? We're now running a farm and we're going to see what we can do with this kind of property.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was really exciting to begin with. I mean, we'd always wanted to one have animals. So that was absolutely the first thing that we did. We bought ourselves some pigs. We brought our chickens with us, and we basically just wanted to live that more outdoor life. But also when we'd looked around the property, the estate agent had mentioned the fact that the previous owners ran a few weddings here and there from the
Okay.
very beautiful oak frame barn, which again set our minds in motion of, oh, well, maybe that would be a really nice thing to carry on and build upon a little bit. Um, Al was still working at the time in Californian startup tech companies, and I was having a little hiatus as we had two young children. I was actually pregnant with my third child at the time of moving into Silchester Farm. So we were like, oh, maybe that's something that I could do, just
Okay.
a dry hire maybe, a few weddings a year. That would be nice and encourage people to the farm and all that kind of thing. And then yeah, so it was very exciting at that time, as and there was lots of different possibilities ahead of us. So, yeah, it was interesting. But I do remember the one moment where we kind of started to run the weddings a little bit, and then
Okay.
realised actually how popular it could be and where this could go. So yeah, and that was quite quite exciting as well, really.
Fantastic. And we should probably, for the listeners, try and now put that in context because, it is an amazing venue now, an amazing wedding venue. Perhaps we could kind of explain to the listeners what you've done with it in that very short, 3, 4 year period and what, the kind of proposition now consists of for weddings and how many weddings a year you're now hosting.
Yeah, I mean, originally, we had an idea of just doing a few weddings from the Hampshire Threshing Barn, which basically is the barn that sits at the centre of the farm. Is around 400 years old, beautiful oak beams. It's got a couple of adjoining buildings which are quite open plan, currently hosting a bar and some soft seating areas, basically for canapes and reception drinks, and the barn
Mm.
itself now holds the wedding ceremonies. However, at that time when we first kind of launched, we polished it up, we made it look pretty, and we went through all the plannings to actually make it formalised because we didn't really know what the other options were. So we were like, right, we're just going to go for full planning permission on it without knowing really whether it would work or it wouldn't work. We went for it, and after some struggles and a lot of money and a lot of time and effort, we finally managed to get there. And yeah, so that was the original proposition, was just that barn, and everything would happen within that barn. So we'd have the dinner and the evening reception and everything in there. However, as we launched, unfortunately, the pandemic hit,
Mm.
and things took a little bit of a back seat. But what we did have before that was some great information from people who came round looking at the venue, because it was very popular right from the start. As soon as we put it out there, people did flood in, to be honest,
Mhm.
way more than we expected. But the feedback was that it might be, or the concerns that people had was that it might be quite a tough turnaround for having the ceremony basically in
Yeah.
one band, followed by the dinner, then followed by the evening celebrations. And it would have been a very challenging thing to have done, but absolutely we could have done it. We had some great advice from some great people, and it can be done, and it is done by many other venues. But it did set us thinking, that's for sure, as the pandemic hit.
Okay. And then and since you've opened a bigger barn now, haven't you, where you host the dinners and all of those kind of things?
Yeah, so we turned one of our other larger agricultural barns into the dining and evening space, which allowed us, one, more space, two, allowed us to build in a much larger commercial kitchen, bar store, bigger
Mhm.
bar, and it allowed us to far more um, the building existed. So when I say purpose build it, I mean kind of create things within it that are far more focused and specific to what goes on in there. So, for example, we put a lot more insulation in. We designed things that gave us the functionality and the usability for the building, um, with exactly what we wanted in mind, whereas the Hampshire threshing barn was very much untouched, and it was probably less fit for purpose than we thought that it could be.
That transition then also, so how's it been, for you and Al running kind of a hospitality business compared to, I suppose, both of you have come from a services, a tech background. I mean, there's a complete difference in the approach to business, isn't it? And the way in which, the front of house. And so how have you kind of adapted to running a hospitality business?
I've got to be honest, it's been a huge, steep learning curve
Yeah.
because we came into the industry as well with the tech background, coming from California startups and Californian-based companies that really have a far more relaxed approach um, to the working environment. It's all about the work-life balance and working from home and being mobile and on the go and being everything's based around technology and having it in the palm of your hand and not printing anything, and it's really a forward thinking way of working. And when we stepped into the hospitality industry, we couldn't believe kind of really how backward it felt in
Sort of
comparison.
archaic it felt. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone printed everything, and the way people spoke to each other was really bad, and it was just, and the respect that people got for the long hours that they were working and the pay involved, and yeah, everything about it was so different. So it's and when we first started, we thought we could apply all the things that we learned in our corporate tech background into the hospitality industry, and
Yeah.
we still do try and do that. However, we've learned that actually the reason the hospitality industry is like this is for good reason, actually. And I think there is definite journey that it needs to go on to progress and to bring it kind of into a world where it fits the daily lives of people
Mm,
nowadays. However, not all that theory that we learned in our past lives, it definitely does not apply to this industry. It's very,
yeah.
very different, and the people are very different, and they're driven by very different things as well. So
Yeah.
that's been interesting.
Definitely. That's interesting, isn't it? Is that I suppose though you must have and still will put time and effort into getting the culture of the business right with
Yeah.
some of those philosophies. But yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you've got to accept that is the industry and that's the environment you're now in, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And we now, I suppose, look for more inspiration from forward-thinking hospitality
Mm.
businesses rather than just our own experiences from the
Okay.
past. So some of our big inspirations are places like the Pig Hotel, um, those kind of chains that really bring that more relaxed feel.
Yeah.
So not everyone's in a name badge and a black dress and a suit and tie serving you
Yeah.
in a certain way. It's that far more relaxed feel, which I guess is um, more in line with the background that we have, where people don't always turn up to their city jobs in suits and ties anymore. Things are far more less
Yeah.
formal and far
Definitely.
more relaxed.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that applies to any industry, isn't it? And it's a good tip for those listening, isn't it? Is that piece around go and see what others in the industry are doing, what best of breed are doing, those that you would align with are doing, and and don't copy what they're doing, but learn from some of those
Yeah.
things. And sometimes that just makes you enables you to be a bit more braver than just following the tribe kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think having that kind of inspiration and really thinking about who you want to be and where you want to go, and not just falling into the trap of um, following those around you. That's certainly something that we could have done very early on. We
Mm,
have quite a few wedding venues, typical wedding venues around us that are barn venues, and originally, when customers were coming in, they were the people that we were being pitched against. So they were looking round us and they were looking round maybe 5 other barn venues in the Hampshire, Berkshire area.
Yeah.
They were comparing us on price and what we had, on everything. And what we really said right from the outset is, "That's great. They're the customers that are coming through our doors, but actually not to disrespect those other businesses, but they are not who we are or who we want to be. So therefore, we don't necessarily pitch ourselves against
Mm.
them. We pitch ourselves against companies that are probably not traditional wedding venues, some that are maybe not even in the hospitality sector. So it's really kind of pitching ourselves differently and staying true to that, because otherwise we could fall down the track of, well, we just want to take the customers, we just want to get the business in,
Mm.
and we'll just match their pricing or their style or their wording or anything else just to get the customers through the door. And that's something that we've focused on and really tried hard not to fall into that trap.
It's really hard to do that, isn't it? To have that face, to have that confidence, to be brave and build the brand, I suppose, because you're coming from maybe a venue that, done a few weddings during the course of a year, hiring out the space to, you being a full service kind of provider now with some accommodation on site and all of those kind of things. So, but you need, when you're building that brand, you do need to be brave and be bold, don't you? And why do you think you've been able to do that? What's given you the confidence for you and Al to do that?
Um, I think probably yeah, ignorance a little bit.
That's an honest answer.
That ignorance is bliss. I mean, you kind of think, well, this is who we want to be, this is who we're going to be, and that's how it is. There's no other option for us. I think, if it hadn't have worked, we'd have looked at things differently.
Mm,
But we're very lucky that it has worked for us, and what our vision and what we like is what a lot of other people like as well. So, and that's really what we've always tried to do, is just kind of please ourselves and hope that it works for other people.
okay.
Because I know when we were looking for a wedding venue, for example, I was quite specific on what I wanted and what I didn't want in terms of the aesthetics. I just wanted something relaxed. I didn't want round tables. I wanted square tables, for example, and
Yeah.
just little things like that, which we just applied to Silchester Farm, and then we realised actually it's what everyone else has been looking for as well. So yeah, it
Brilliant.
was it was interesting.
And I'm gonna have to ask you, you got a great team there, but do they look at you sometimes and just kind of shake their head in wonder, or do they
Always.
follow you?
They
Or do
think
they?
we're crazy. I'm sure they think we're crazy, because, um, yeah, because we're always moving forward. We're always looking for ways to improve. We never ever sit still. So, for example, when we developed the cowshed, which is the dining space that we have now, we developed it, and within the same month of finishing it, we held our first event in it. So we felt like everyone else was like, "Oh, this is amazing." They came into it and they'd not seen it before, and they were saying, "Oh, this is incredible. We could never have imagined that this is what it was going to look like." But we were still kind of a little bit unhappy with it. And only recently
Uh,
have we got round to changing it again. And people were saying, "Why are you changing it? It works." And yeah, but we know what we wanted it to be
yeah.
originally. We've not quite got there. And so we're always working on ways to change things and to move forward. And I think because as well of the pandemic, I think we really saw the way in which we needed to stay fresh and be able to adapt quickly and have that
Mm,
diversification within the business. So, for example, we don't just do weddings; we do a lot of other events, a mixture of dining events and things for the local village and community and charity things, and which a lot of other wedding venues don't do, because
mm,
once you've got into the flow of weddings, it becomes the easiest thing to do. You know what you're
yeah.
doing. It's really kind of a good format to follow. However, those other events keep us really fresh and keep us moving. And the team, it's a challenge for the team. It definitely is because they're quite a switch between styles always.
Mm.
So the way we cater for a wedding on the bar or catering or service-wise is very different to how we would do for a dining event, or very different to how we do a market event or a music event. Or so we're always keeping the team on their toes, and that they're often like, we can't do that, we can't do that. We say, "You can, come on, we can do
Come
it."
on,
And
let's do it.
yeah, exactly. And okay, not everything's a full success, but it's always worth trying because it always gives us some learning points and some experience and
Definitely.
stuff that we can apply to all areas of our business.
It's really interesting what you say about the farm and it being part of the community, and it kind of resonates with me because we've got this lovely old school building as Evolve's offices, and it's part of the community. And when we took it on as our co-working space in our offices, I was like, well, what else can we do to bring that building back into the community? So,
Yeah,
there's Pilates, yoga classes, there's grammar school kind of teaching that takes place in there in the evenings, for prepping for grammar schools. We're going to there's a Christmas fair taking place, and it's really brought the building to life. And I feel really proud that we've done that. But it sounds like that's part of your ambition for some of the uses for the farm as well.
definitely. I mean, like I said earlier, when we set foot on this farm, we fell in love, and we just couldn't way to bring it back to life. Silchester Farm was owned by the Duke of Wellington a long time ago, and it
Okay.
was a huge pig farm and a huge employer for the local community. We know that because a lot of people who come back say, "Oh, I used to work there," or "My uncle used to work there," or "My dad," or "My granddad," and everyone has a story to tell us about what
Mm,
parts of the farm were what, and what did what, and what happened, and who owned it. And it's got such a huge history, and the buildings that we have here are so beautiful. Um, a lot of them are quite understated, but a lot of them have some beautiful features. So it was really important to bring it back to life. And a lot of people often walk past the farm when we first moved in and said, "I haven't seen the farm for years," because there was higher fences up. There was private owners who, like I say, ran a few weddings for the village, were
mm,
involved in the community, and were absolutely lovely people. But it wasn't a main employer anymore. Not a lot of people visited the farm, and we really feel proud that we have brought it back to life, and people are very complimentary about the way it looks now, and what it does add to the village. And we're really keen for people to be able to come and visit the farm and see it and spend time here and bring back that nostalgia for them.
yeah.
And be able to talk about the stories and be able to tell us we're fascinated by what's happened at the farm previously. So I do think it's important, especially in this day and age where a lot of farms are being sold off for housing developments
Mm,
and everything else. I do think it's really important to protect the beautiful features of the countryside, the buildings, the green spaces, everything else that we have. I think it's important, and to give it a new lease of life, because farming itself is
mm,
challenging without a doubt. And as farms grow smaller, as the land's sold off over the years, we currently have 24 acres, which it's really unsustainable as a
yeah.
farm grow anything or to raise enough animals or to do anything that's fully in the farming world. It's unsustainable. So there has to be other uses for it, and we're very lucky that we have a lot of outbuildings that we can capitalize on, but would otherwise become totally out of use and dilapidated.
Mm, definitely. So, are you undertaking much farming on the land, and is that Al's focus? I mean, how do you split responsibilities between the two of you as husband and wife?
I mean, it's always evolving. I'll say
Yeah.
that. And to be honest, we don't do a huge amount of farming, so the animals that we have on our land are mainly our personal pets. Is probably a step too far, but we love them, and they're part of the the heart and soul of the farm, the part of the feel of it, the part of the genuine nature of it, and that's what we always want to keep. We got the pigs, as I say, when we first moved in as our moving in present, and we'd never eat them. They're named. We actually, and you know what? They're the mascots of our business. But we have a few sheep which we've started to go into breeding, and I think we'd like a few more pigs. And we've got our chickens that produce eggs that we're starting to put back into the food, and we'd love a few more animals on the farm. And we do some hay production, but generally, we work with a local farmer as well who grazes his animals on the land and takes the
Okay.
hay from our land, which is a nice way of doing it because it means that we don't have always all the hard work of
Yeah.
managing the acreage that we have, and the animals that could be on there. But we do get the pleasure of having the animals on the land, and in return, we do get some of the lambs that can go back into our food as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I suppose it's bringing that land back into use, isn't it? And I was just about to ask the question, which was quite a scary one, I think, from that transition from California tech businesses to hospitality is one thing, but becoming fully fledged farmers is another step, isn't it? And I was baffled at
Yeah.
how that maybe had been achieved. So it is a business you do together. You do, I assume, live on the farm, live on site.
Yeah,
How's that been as a transition, in terms of the children, the family, business being always there? How do you
yeah.
manage that as a family?
It's definitely got its pros and cons, that's for
Mm,
sure. And yeah, I mean, the children, I feel like they're very privileged to have the life that they do and the experiences that they have here on the farm. And both from the animal side and the space, but also the people that come here and the events that we put on and the
mm,
things that they see. Um, but it is hard because anyone who owns their own company knows that because it's all on your shoulders, it's all consuming. The
mm,
farm is as much a part of our life as anything that we have in our life, as each other. Everything revolves around the farm and what we do here and what we need to do,
yeah,
and it is very all consuming, and it is very hard to draw the line sometimes between business and personal life,
yeah.
especially having the farmhouse here on the farm and living here. um, there's very fluid boundaries between personal life and business, and for the children as well. It's hard because it's their home. They come home after school or at the weekends, and they want to be in the garden screaming and jumping on their trampoline, and the dogs want to be barking in the garden and running around and doing what they should be, and quite often it can be a bit stressful for me running around saying, "Shh, there's people here. They're getting ready.
It's a wedding.
They're
There's a wedding ceremony.
yeah, there's people here. Don't be screaming and crying and fighting in the garden." So, but that's part of normal life. And I think, to begin with, for a lot of our customers, that was definitely part of the charm. They loved
Mm,
seeing the kids on the farm. They loved seeing the dogs. They loved seeing the free range chickens. They loved it when sometimes our children ran after us when we were trying to talk to customers and interrupted. And I think now, as the business has grown and developed and we're targeting a different kind of customer, that those attitudes are starting to
mm.
change a little, and so we're having to be a bit more careful about that. um but generally it's good fun, but I think it's something that we're definitely working on and developing on to try and give us that work life balance.
Yeah, it's that myth, isn't it, of that that kind of the holy grail of work-life balance, which is difficult
Yeah,
for any business owner, particularly in those early years and those times when you're growing the business and really getting the ball rolling. But yeah, it must be really difficult when you are kind of the threat of constantly being present and
yeah.
on call must be, yeah, adds a completely different dimension to it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I guess we're at that critical part of our business development as well. We're still very early on in our journey, and
Mm,
so the business is a baby still, and we're having to put a lot of time and effort into it. And I guess the benefit of being here on site is that we can still have that flexibility to be able to jump in when we need it and give the business the attention we need, but also be able to go and pick the children up from school and
Yeah.
be there for their school plays or concerts or anything that we need to be. It's you know, it gives us both worlds,
Yeah,
but we are
definitely.
learning to balance it.
Yeah. As you said, pros and cons,
Yeah,
and probably pros and cons in equal measure. So,
yeah,
need to touch on and want to touch on, as I said, we came and hosted an event as part of the Basingstoke and Dean Business Festival at Silchester Farm, and it was a Going Green event. So, the reason we chose Silchester Farm as the venue was not only it was a great venue, but your actual kind of significant measures you're doing yourselves in terms of green and sustainability. So I just wonder, again, for our listeners, perhaps you could touch on some of the significant sustainability measures that you've put in place on the farm and on why you're doing that and the lessons you've learned along the way, Carla.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for us, it's always been important. Um, we've always wanted to respect the environment that we're in, and I think when we first started seeing weddings, it was a real eye opener as to how much was just thrown away after one event, one day. People were putting a lot of time and effort and money into things that could just be fully discarded at the end of the
Mm.
day. So it was really important for us to offset from our point of view any impact, because of course we can't really control what people want to do on their wedding days and what they want to buy and what they want to put
No.
on the tables and things. So really we can offer guidance and help and give them tips and things on how they can reduce waste. But really, we thought we had to offset it. And of course, the other reason for us implementing things is that these are old buildings that we're working with here at Silchester Farm. So you can imagine the huge bills that we have
Yeah.
and have had in the past. Energy, heating, electricity, everything. So that was really important to us too. So I think when we've been developing the buildings and the business, we've been really conscious of trying to put measures in place that help us right from the start. It's really hard to see the future, which has been really tricky because these are huge investments that we've made in our
Mm.
buildings. So we've had to think many, many years ahead as much as we
Yeah.
possibly
So
can.
long-term thinking rather than, short-term
Yeah,
profitability.
so a big start for us was obviously the insulation. All the buildings needed a huge amount of insulation. They had basically nothing in most of the buildings. So that has been a big step forward for us. Is hugely insulating everything from roofs to under the floors to walls to everywhere that we possibly can. I think the other thing is that the heating that we've put in, we've looked at so many alternative heating options, from biomass heaters to um, what type of boilers to full electricity to solar panel.
Mm.
Everything you can imagine, we've looked at and weighed up the pros and cons and what we could afford at the time and what we had space for and what we could get planning for and time constraints. And I've got to be honest, right now we're still mainly on oil, which is
Mm.
um, it's disappointing for us at this point in time. But I think we would definitely, like I say, we're always evolving, so we'd love to move on from the oil. But we have tried to put technology in place to help us have more efficiency in the oil boilers that we use and the solutions that we have in place. So we've put things like underfloor heating in many of our buildings because it is much more efficient. We've upgraded all the boilers on site and added new boilers which are run far more efficiently than the old boilers that we had. And we've really tried to reuse and recycle as much as we can as well. um, Put things in that we're not buying new, especially as we did a lot of development again during the pandemic when supplies were short, prices were high,
Yeah.
and the farm's been there for many, many years and had lots. We've got a storage barn that's full of everything off the farm that's been built up over many years. And originally we were like, oh, what we're going to do with all this junk? But actually, it's turned really into treasure.
Yeah.
And we reuse as much of it as we can around the farm. That's definitely one thing that we carry on with as well. We've done a lot of planting on the farm, so we work now with a spirits company who provide our spirits to our bar, but on the back of that, for every bottle that we buy, they plant a sapling tree. And
Okay.
so earlier in the year, we had a lot of those saplings actually planted at the farm, which has been lovely
Wow.
to grow. And I think we'll do another round of planting with them again back end of this year, or maybe the beginning of next year. We've also taken out as much of the concrete and the asbestos and the old farming stuff that's been here and replaced it with a lot of new hedging and planting um, and trees and grass areas that also we can then use to forage on. So we've
Okay.
planted like a lot of nut trees and fruit trees and things that we can then use in the future to put back into our food here on the farm as well. So we've done lots really, and we're continuing to grow with that. The bar's completely plastic free, and we use the wheat straws, which I know we spoke about at the Going
Yeah.
Green event as well, which we're proud of. And we did change our toilet roll, which sounds like such a small thing, but when we're an events business that runs 7 days a week, we go through a lot of toilet roll, and it's really important to us that even the smallest things become sustainable and just a bit more conscious, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. What I loved about your approach was that the philosophy is that you're encouraging everybody in their own way, in their own teams and in their own departments to come up with the ideas. And it's something that's sort of ingrained into the philosophy of the business. And I suppose is are you seeing it now? It's just an interesting see to see. Are you seeing a change from consumers when they come to view the venue talking about sustainability, or is it something that you push and they then like? Is it a push or pull kind of effect?
Both, I would say, definitely. I mean, we're definitely seeing a shift in customers, the questions that they ask and the things that they're looking for.
Hmm.
Um, so they will ask about waste and about the bar and about our sustainability measures. And there's things that we can do as well over and above it. So they kind of come to us and say, what else can we do? Um, we do have a lot more suppliers as well that are very conscious about it. So a lot of the florists are changing their practices of how they do the floristry. For instance, the water wells that they put the flowers into, typically they weren't very eco-friendly.
Okay.
Now they're using more natural materials in their floristry work, which is really important. The other thing is that people are hiring more and buying less. They're swapping, they're talking to each other. There's a lot more online communication between brides and grooms and
Hmm.
event planners and even the corporate events market. There's a lot more people using pre-loved and pre-used items, which is really nice to see. So I definitely think people are more conscious. Our customers are more conscious, and the more conscious they are, the more conscious we are, and vice versa, really.
Definitely, it's sort of it's a circle, isn't it, that just drives that great activity and makes change happen. I suppose I've got to ask the question. You're kind of 4 years into the journey. Where do you see the farm? Where do you now see things in 5, 10 years time? Do you see yourself still living, owning the farm and running the events business? What's next, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're in this for the long haul. We've put so much effort into it. It's
Mm,
our absolute pride and joy, and our love. Basically, we've put every penny of our own money, we've put every minute of our own time. It's absolutely in our veins and in our it's in our DNA now.
yeah,
So we're in this for the long haul, but we never want to stand still. I think it's great. what we're doing now, but we definitely want to evolve the business. And I think it's important for the business's future and the farm's future for us
Mm.
to continually move forward and keep diversifying a little bit, keeping us fresh. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we can't just put all our eggs in one basket,
No.
especially the wedding basket, as
Mm.
you know, it was kind of the forgotten industry during the
It was,
pandemic.
wasn't it? Yeah.
It was really challenging, and I think the way that we should all be future proofing ourselves is to make sure that we have
Yeah.
that flexibility and that diversity. So definitely we've got plans to change the business slightly, and diversify, but also to bring more sustainable practices in and to change and develop that way as well. We'd love to become a B Corp company.
Yeah.
That's a great aim for us. And as we develop the team, and get a bit further down our line and settled into how things run on a daily basis, it will free up our time in order to make those plans and really work hard on those developments.
It is fantastic. And it's interesting that you mentioned the pandemic because from this conversation, you know, it presented a little bit of an opportunity for you to pause, develop, and complete the refurbishment, but others in your industry weren't so fortuitous, were they, as that? And I suppose, like you say, you've got to have your eyes wide open to those threats and those things that could just come blindside us in business from time to time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the definitely the wedding industry, from what we've seen, had become quite complacent. You know,
Mm,
they could churn out the weddings day after day and not need to change much. And I think not just the wedding industry, but I think that happened across a lot of industries and a lot of
mm,
different businesses. And I think we it's been a long time since we've had a big shock like this, either an economic shock or something of this scale, to say actually you all need to be less complacent and to keep fresh and to keep putting your customers first and thinking about how you can stay relevant and how you can do what's best for your customers, because you can't just take advantage
no,
anymore of a churn of a constant income. It's not that easy, and you've got to really be aware. And I think a lot of people now are aware that actually we do need to be a little bit more on our toes and think about
definitely.
um, how we can survive anything that comes along, not just a pandemic, but stuff that we could never imagine could come along.
No,
So yeah.
definitely. Yeah. And I suppose as we start to wrap up, I suppose that time you and Al spent in California running, being part of the tech kind of industries where that's constant change and constant development, nothing stands still for a minute. That must have helped you through that process, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. We come from a background where everything changes every single week, every single day. You've got to be running to keep up with it. So yeah, we're very used to that, and I guess that's why we've got this drive in us to keep moving
Hmm.
forward and keep changing things. So yeah, definitely that's been a great influence, and I think that's a great benefit for us having come from a different industry into this industry as well.
Definitely. Right. Final question. Always the question I end in on is this, you question of success and personal success. So what does personal success mean to you, Carla?
To be honest, I think it's definitely a feeling. So, and I guess that's the woman in me coming out a bit there. In that, for me, it's all about happiness and contentment and the feeling inside. It's um, I could have everything in the world, but it would mean nothing without my family, and I could
Mm,
lose everything in the world except my family. So
yeah.
for me, like my personal success is to be happy and content. And that's not every day that that happens, and that's still something that we're all working towards. But
Yeah.
that for me is true success when you feel happy and content with life.
Brilliant. What a beautiful definition of success. I love that. If people want to learn more about the farm, where want to hire it, want to learn more, and learn more about what's going on, where can they go?
Well, we've got loads of information on the website now. We've been developing that, so you can find loads of information about what we do, from our events to our sustainability efforts, to what we've got going on. Our Instagram is a huge place for us too, and we try and put as much as we can out there, on all of our social media channels. So that's really the best place to find out more about us.
Brilliant. I've loved our conversation. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's been great. It's been broad. It's been wide ranging. And thank you for being a great guest, Carla, on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been really enjoyable, and I feel very honoured. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.